Greetings from the World Health Organization. In this brief presentation, I'm going to take you through some key messages from a recently published paper which is titled Mapping the Knowledge and Understanding of Menarche, Menstrual Hygiene, and Menstrual Health Among Adolescent Girls in Low and Middle Income Countries. The paper has been published in the Reproductive Health Journal and it's co-authored by Sheila Patel and myself. The objectives of the paper are listed on this slide. The 5 objectives are: how knowledgeable are adolescent girls about this subject? Who are their sources of information? How well do adolescents respond to girls' information and support needs? What are the negative health and social effects that adolescent girls experience? And lastly, how do they respond when they experience these negative health and social effects? To do this review, we carefully went through articles published in peer-reviewed journals between 2000 and 2015. Our focus was on evidence from low and middle-income countries. And we included papers which had data relevant to adolescents, individuals in the 10 to 19 years age group. We identified 81 studies to include from 21 countries listed on this slide. Now, the findings. 5 findings. 1. How knowledgeable are adolescent girls in low and middle income countries about menstruation and how prepared are they for reaching menarche? The messages are very simple. Many girls are not aware of menstruation on the day their periods start. Many girls have inadequate knowledge. Many girls have misconceptions. And the more educated a girl is, the more knowledgeable she is, and the less misconceptions she has. That's the first question. The second question: who are young girls' sources of information regarding menstruation? Mothers, universally, are the first and main source of information. Sisters and other female relatives, aunts, cousins, and peers, female peers, were the next most important sources. Teachers, health workers, etc. don't figure on the list at all or are very, very low on that list. In some places, girls have access to information from the media, including the internet. So the primary source of information for young girls from low and middle income countries is mothers and other female relatives, and in some cases, friends. How well do adults respond to girls' information needs? In many countries, the information they get is too little and too late. And often mothers themselves have enormous knowledge gaps and misconceptions and pass this on to their daughters. So without any bad intention, they're actually harming their daughters by giving them the wrong information and by holding back this information. In one study in Kenya said that there's huge discomfort in talking about it, and that's one of the key reasons why this information doesn't reach girls very early. As we saw in relation to question number 1, when parents are better educated, they're much more knowledgeable about menstruation. They are also much more able to talk about it with their daughters. I'm talking so much about daughters, but this applies to sons as well. The 4th question is, what negative health and social effects are experienced by adolescents? Emotional effects, the shock of discovering that blood is coming out of your body, is something that many girls who haven't been prepared talk about. And in workshops that we run for health workers, they remember this shock 20 years later, 30 years later. So that's a very important issue. Another issue, of course, is because menstruation is associated with dirt and pollution and shame, there is an emotional impact associated with it. There are physical impacts. Menstruation doesn't kill like unsafe abortion does. So there are problems. We shouldn't minimize these problems, but there are problems. But these problems generally can be dealt with. In terms of social impacts, as listed on the slide, because of taboo Girls in many cultures are not allowed to bathe, they're not allowed to enter the kitchen, they're not allowed to sleep on their beds, they're not allowed to pray, they're not allowed to participate in social ceremonies. And because of the symptoms in many places and because of the lack of access to toilets, they're not able to go to school or sometimes even to go to work. So there are important health and social effects that adolescents experience. My final question is, how well do adolescents respond when they experience these effects, and what practices do they develop? Sanitary pad use ranges from 2% in rural Nepal to very high levels in urban Nigeria. So this, of course, depends on where you are. There are many, many parts of the world where girls still use dry leaves, old newspapers to mop up menstrual flow because they don't have access to what women and girls in the high-income countries of the world take for granted. Just want to stress that even in high-income countries, women who are on the street or women who are in prison or in boarding homes sometimes face the same challenges that girls in less privileged contexts do. Very few girls consult health workers for medication. They're often told that, you're a woman. These are women's problems. You have to deal with it. Don't complain. So in that kind of context, they don't complain. They don't seek care. They don't ask for help. And we shouldn't be surprised later on in life when so many of them don't seek care when they have a breast lump or an abnormal cervical discharge. So 5 takeaways listed on this slide. Girls are uninformed and unprepared. Mothers and other female relatives are the primary sources of information. They give little information, often too late. And often they convey their own misconceptions to their daughters. Girls experience a variety of symptoms, but much more than the symptoms as they deal with emotional and social shocks associated with menstruation. Very few girls seek medical care. And girls in rural and poor urban communities face challenges in dealing with their menstruation. And this does affect their quality of life and their ability to function effectively. To conclude, what do girls need? Firstly, girls need to grow up in a context where menstruation is seen as healthy, normal, something that is not shameful or dirty or associated with pollution. Menstruation is a physiological phenomenon, and what we have done over the years to transform it in something that needs to be hidden and be ashamed of, we have to change. Girls need to be educated about menstruation. They need to have access to sanitary products, to water, to soap, to toilets, to disposal facilities. They need to be cared for and supported at home, at school, at work. And when they do have problems, they need to be able to seek help from a competent health worker, a competent and considerate health worker who doesn't minimize their problems or dismiss them as unimportant. So that brings me to the end of this brief presentation. I hope very much that this will interest you to go back and look at the paper. And if you have any questions or comments, Sheila Patel and I would be very pleased to hear from you. Greetings once again from the World Health Organization, and thank you.